All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a question that's probably on a lot of your minds, especially if you're a renter. Why are apartment rents finally starting to drop?
I mean, for years, it felt like rent was only going one way, up. Steep, relentless increases, right? But now, the whole market is shifting, and pretty dramatically. So the big question is the era of crazy high rent finally over? Let's take a look at the numbers and see what's really going on.
Okay, so check this out. The national median rent, it fell again in November, down to $1,367. And here's the kicker. This isn't just a fluke. It's actually the fourth month in a row that we've seen a drop. And it's not just about the price. Look at this. The national apartment vacancy rate has jumped to 7.2%. Now I know 7% might not sound like a ton, but it is a record high for this particular index. We're talking more empty apartments than we've seen in years.
So when you put it all together and kind of zoom out, the picture is crystal clear. Rents are now down more than 5% from their peak back in 2022. That is a huge reversal from the insane climb we all got used to. So what's going on? What's behind all this?
All right, let's get into the why. The first big reason is pretty straightforward: supply. There is a massive, and I mean massive, flood of new apartments hitting the market. You could call it the Great Apartment Boom. So for the last few years, builders have just been going nuts, putting up new apartment buildings left and right. They were trying to keep up with what looked like endless demand. But here's the thing. Now, all those buildings are finally finished, and all those new units are hitting the market at the exact same time. It's created this glut, a ton of empty apartments just waiting for renters. But you know, a ton of new apartments is only one side of the coin. To really get what's happening, you also have to look at the other side, demand. Or maybe the lack of demand. We've got to solve what I'm calling the missing renter mystery. And this is where it gets really interesting when you look at the demographics. The people who are supposed to be renting, young adults 18 to 34 years old, well, a staggering 32.5% of them are still living with their families. They're just not moving out and starting their own households like everyone thought they would. So, why? Well, this quote from Grant Montgomery over at CoStar really hits the nail on the head. He says it's a mix of those crazy high rents we've seen over the past few years, plus a tougher job market for people just getting out of college. Think about it. It's a total double whammy. It's expensive to live on your own, and it's harder to get a great job. That's a perfect storm for keeping young people at home. Now, it's super important to remember that this whole high supply, low demand thing isn't happening the same way everywhere. When you look across the country, it's really a tale of two very different markets. And you can see that split pretty clearly. On one side, you've got cities that used to be red hot, like Austin, Las Vegas, and Boston. They're now seeing some pretty big rent drops. But on the other side, you've got places like Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Atlanta turning into the new hotspots for renters. Why? Because people are chasing affordability. And if you look closer, each of these struggling cities has its own story. Austin, that's that massive construction boom we just talked about, just way too much supply. Las Vegas, tourism has slowed down, which hits the job market there really hard. And Boston is a different story altogether. A drop in biotech funding and fewer foreign students means there are just fewer people looking for apartments. So where are renters looking to go instead? Well, the data from online searches is pretty telling. It's pointing overwhelmingly to one place, the Midwest. Get this. 11 of the top 30 most searched for cities are in the Midwest. That is a huge signal that for a lot of people, affordability is now the name of the game.
Okay, so we've covered the supply glut, the missing renters, and how this all looks different depending on where you live. So, what's next? Let's try to piece this all together and see what the future might hold for your rent.
Here's the thing. Even though builders are finally starting to pump the brakes on new projects, the pipeline is still packed. Forecasters are saying the supply boom still has, and I'm quoting here, a bit of runway remaining. In plain English, that means a whole lot more new apartments are still set to open up all the way through 2026. So this sets up a really interesting push and pull that's going to shape the market for the next couple of years. On the one hand, you have construction slowing down, which should eventually help stabilize prices. But on the other hand, you have a shaky labor market, and that could keep demand from renters pretty weak.
So what does this all boil down to? Well, for now, the market is finally giving renters a break. You've got more options and softer prices, which is great news. But the big question hanging over everything is, for how long?
The future really comes down to which of these two powerful forces wins out: the slowing supply of new apartments or the weak demand from renters.